Good morning. This is Wednesday, or good evening, or good night, wherever you are. April 14, 2014. Michael Vanderpool, and I'm driving on the way to Columbia, Missouri today to meet with the staff of a couple of U.S. senators here in Missouri on the topic of the Republic of Georgia and some journalism I had done in my time on my last couple of visits over there. But this talk is going to be about a couple of different things. First of all, on my Magi Star astrology talk or blog talk radio show, I talked about the April 21st date and the Grand Cross in April, and I got a heads up from one of the members over at the Magi Society, actually Magi Betty, and she's got a great blog. I encourage you to check that out. Magi, that's M-A-G-I, Betty, B-E-T-T-E, and she's got a great blog on astrology. And so I was chatting with her about some other things, and she pointed out to me that there had been a number of computer problems in April, and that could have been well connected with the April Grand Cross. And you know, in checking Wired magazine, there was even a former NATO commander or someone high in the military, I believe here in the U.S. actually, who had mentioned that in times past, and it's also one of the psychic twins' predictions in the past, as well as Gerald Salante mentioning this for this time ahead, that we have to be careful about computer hacking attacks. And in fact, one of the psychic twins predictions, I think, was fulfilled in April as well, as far as that aspect, you know, heartbleed or the security flaw. And so, but I understood in talking with Magi Betty that this is a problem with the internet in this last April 2014 that actually slowed everything down. And I think I read somewhere as much as 66%, and companies perhaps as diverse as Yahoo to Gmail to Hotmail to, you know, other AOL service providers and so on had been affected by hackers. And to go back to Wired magazine and the military commander that was quoted by Wired magazine and technology, we see that you know, they've actually talked about that would be considered an act of war if there continues to be these massive computer hacking attacks on U.S. banking and computer infrastructure. And as I understood it, it may not be something that the powers that be really want to share with the public, because, you know, they may feel a little bit vulnerable, and you know, they don't want to put fear or panic into the public. So I'm not sure about all that. This is just very loosely what I've got hints or mentions of from some folks that I've talked to, and as I mentioned, some of those specific sources on that. So April saw the computer hacking and the slowdown of the internet, and some major service providers affected by that. So that could be part of the offensive. But the Wired magazine mentioned that these hackers have source back to countries such as Russia, North Korea, and China in the past. And I noticed that during a time of war games in the past, and I think it was Russian war games, I'm not sure, I think it was, one would have to research on their own to confirm that, or to find out if that's actually correct or accurate. The war games coincided with a massive hacking attack in which some media was trying to point out at some bunker somewhere, and they even tried to bring the Dutch in on it or something, and they tried to say that, you know, there was probably some disinformation around that. But I noticed that they did coincide with the war games, this massive hacking attack that had happened before. And then there was some speculation or questions that one news article on the internet brought up about how that the LAX shut down and some of the other airports could have been affected by, an EMP pulse weapon, as supposed, or an alleged Russian plane flew near that area, when other reports were alleging that it was an or Su-2, I don't know what you call it, a spy plane. And then in the same article it talked about that there was denials to that. So it's really hard to know what really went on, if anything, with all that. So I do know that I heard on the British television that the economic factors, the numbers, were just terrible as far as the indicators, the growth indicators for the economy in the U.S. And so that's a little bit connected possibly with those kinds of things. And it's hard to confirm without some solid sources on that. Now, we do know about the computer hacking. There's no question that happened. But as far as whether there was an actual EMP attack, and if that was the actual cause of the problems with some of the airports in the U.S. shutting down and things like that, now that, at least to my knowledge, and from what little I could find on that, is still very much speculative at best. But the other topic is that locally, that's on the astrology topic, that's on the Grand Cross that was around the mid-April time frame, and in the April 21st Uranus square Pluto. And you could call that, as I said in a video back in January on the astrology of power struggles, you could call that power struggles that took place and still continue between the West and Russia, or between the United States, in fact, maybe you could even say NATO, but definitely the EU and the United States in terms of versus Russia in terms of sanctions that they're imposing on each other. And that can certainly be seen as power struggles for the month of April 2014, which I talked about as early back as the end of January 2014, as I made a video similar to the one I'm making right now when I was at Discovery Cafe in Baquet, Tbilisi, Republic of Georgia. So you can look that up, the astrology of power struggles, and I predicted that for April 2014, and quite accurately. I don't know of any other astrologer that did that, but very easy to see with the Uranus square Pluto. But I'd also talked about the possibility of the banking or global financial collapse peaking out then, and I still question how much is being reported or how much has been affected by. Now, we know it's true on Russia. Even the Russian leadership, such as Dmitry Medvedev, had admitted, supposedly according to the news reports, if I understood it correctly and read it correctly, that Russia hit, basically they're in a serious recession, that the sanctions had taken a very serious impact on their economy. The ruble fell, and they're definitely feeling it. In fact, I had read elsewhere where billions of dollars in capital had took flight from Russia. So in the case of Russia, it's absolutely true. And again, if we pay attention to what the British were saying on television there, the economic numbers and factors for the United States were absolutely grim, dismal, has just released this, I think, this last quarter, if I understood it correctly. So you'd have to do your own research and look that up. But that's on the astrology of April 2014. I'm definitely correct, as I called it back on January 2014, as seen in the video posted then on the astrology of power struggles for the month of April 2014, that being very heavy and peaking out then. And that's about the time also that the Ukraine, 10 different cities, and the Crimea, now it's more than 10 cities, but was basically stormed by pro-Russian activists, and the Russian flags put up on government buildings as Russian troops lined up on the border or in border areas in live fire exercises and so on. So in that situation, again, and in fact I had predicted war in the Ukraine, and regardless of what the world media called it, they call it a crisis, or they may call it a crisis or a conflict or something like that. I call that war. When you have a foreign country, flags and people supporting that foreign country, storming your government buildings in 10 different cities, including and additionally the Crimea, which is a region of the Ukraine. That's war. That's an act of war. And that actually began to take place around the beginning of April, which I had predicted specifically in another video called a storm warning for the Ukraine. And I had predicted that within 5 days of March 28, 2014. So that's on the astrology predictions. Now, on a different topic, I had told my mother just within the last a week or two, the last couple of weeks for sure, that we have to be careful in Marshall, Missouri, that there could be tornadoes for the first time touch down. Because, again, if we look at predictive sources such as Billy Edward Albert Meyer, Figu out of Switzerland, that's F-I-G-U, Billy Edward Albert Meyer. If we look at his material, if we look at the Psychic Twins predictions, if we look at John Moore, and this is very, very critical because this is based on science. So for those of you that want a scientific explanation, and not predictive information per se, but an actual scientific basis as to why the weather extremes are becoming more frequent, more intense, why we're seeing more megastorms, and why more than likely we will continue to do so in the intensity, frequency, and in a surprising way. The weather systems, in fact, this was just talked about on a local level by a family member, that the sirens didn't go off soon enough, in their opinion, or loud enough on the first siren, but that the tornado that hit and touched down in Marshall, Missouri, and definitely some farms around there. There's no question that I took film and video. You can see it on my YouTube channel, TIGR 7170, or Michael Vanderpool. Search in YouTube and put in the word tornado or storms or Marshall, Missouri, and you'll see at one of my uncle's farms, the Phillips family farms, you'll see some neighbors there too, the damage that it did to the buildings and to the trees. It just sheared the trees or twisted the treetops right off, which is damage from a tornado. But I continue to hear, even today, Wednesday, May 14, 2014, that is today, I continue to hear about the damage, even last night and this morning, that it had done to other farms, including livestock buildings, tool sheds, and trees, and properties in general around the Saline County, Missouri area. So, but I had told my mother, I said, because in Marshall, Missouri, it's rare, if ever. I'm still trying to ask around or find a source that can tell us when or if the last time a tornado touched down in Marshall, Missouri, because it's very, very rare, that would happen. But it happened this last week, and it's something that we don't expect because the city of Marshall is in a valley. So, but if you look at John Moore, the Liberty Man, John Moore, he's got his talk radio show, and he's got an article on his website. John Moore, the Liberty Man. You can type that into Google. And John's here in Missouri. He's got an amazing set of credentials and experience and background, even as a former military intelligence officer, and also a number of other interesting types of work that he's done. But his specialty is knowledge, really, and it's well worth listening to his radio show and checking out his website. But there's an article there about how the Gulf Stream, and in his opinion, this is the second most important story in the last 2,000 years, about how the Gulf Stream has been altered, changed, or dead, the jet stream and so on, and how that's affecting the weather and will continue to, and the prices of food and agriculture and things like that. So it's well worth checking out. I've linked to that in the description or comments section of some of the previous videos I've done on this topic. And now I'm entering Columbia, Missouri, actually the city limits. So be sure to check that out. It's really, really important. And for farmers and such, it's worthy to have a storm shelter. My mom put a storm shelter in 2009 based on this type of information I was giving her previous to that. And then to have strategies, to have early warning systems, to pay attention to the weather because it's going to be more sudden, more extreme. As I said, megastorms. Also protection from wind and gusts of wind, and that includes when you're driving, because wind gusts can push other cars, other vehicles, including semi-trailers, right into your vehicle when you're driving. So it's going to be more important now to pay attention to the weather, especially to the wind and possible wind gust when you're driving. And also tree trimming and tree removal. If you've got dead trees or trees that are too close to your property. Also the study, again, of windbreaks itself, what trees to plant and what way that are in the right distance, in the right formation to provide a buffer of between gusts, wind gusts, or these kind of megastorms possibly, to maybe give a little bit of protection to your property and your vehicles and so on. So there needs to be planning and strategy and early warning systems and stuff like that. This is just my opinion. This is just for entertainment purposes only and for information purposes only. And thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Michael Vanderpool on YouTube, or TIGR7170. And for those friends and family watching me on Facebook from around the world, hello and have a great day.